On this episode of Chase Classic Motors, we're taking a ride in the ultimate aspirational automobile. To many, the 1968 Cadillac Coupe Deville symbolized the American dream, and owning one meant that you had made it here in America. Perhaps it's no wonder that so many made men preferred the colossal Cadillac Coupe compared to their contemporaries in 1960s America. Politicians, businessmen, and wise guys alike all lined up to purchase the King of Caddies back in the swinging 60s. This car expressed wealth, style, power, presence, comfort, and luxury all in one grand design. But was this all just marketing hype, or was the biggest of the big three really the king of cars in the decade that brought us youth culture and changing social mores? To find out, let's have Eric take us through some of the quality features and engineering that went into creating the Cadillac of cars. And we'll see if GM's legendary behemoth is more movie star than mob boss, as either way, when that clock strikes, we're in for a command performance. What time is it, Eric?
Time to work on a Coupe Deville.
Exactly. It's Cadillac time. We've got another Cadillac, and what a Cadillac. It's a 68.
Yeah, we're gonna have to become Cadillac specialists, I suppose, because this is the fourth or fifth one. So, yeah.
And what's so cool about the 1968 Cadillac Coupe Deville?
Everything. But I think what you're asking about specifically is the engine. This was the first year for the famous 472.
And there it is, 472 Cadillac.
They were never great for power. They were pretty healthy for torque, and they're certainly very stout. I don't know if anyone ever put 200,000 or 300,000 miles on a Cadillac with this engine in, but I'm sure you could. They're very tough. And the turbo 400 trans too.
And if I could even get this in frame, you get that full size luxury experience, because oh my goodness, this is a big car.
Yeah. I mean, even for just a two-door, it's huge.
Now, just to catch everyone up, this car has been here before, but the audience never got a chance to see it in the last season.
Yeah, we were doing other projects. Not sure why we didn't do much with this car. Found some interesting stuff with it. One of the problems this car came in for the first time it was here was the fan belts were actually rubbing on the water pump. So I don't know if you can even pick that up, but the fan belts on the AC compressor to the power steering pump there were rubbing on the front of the water pump. I found out through forums and stuff that that's a very common thing for the Cadillac Big Block, and I found another water pump for it, which was actually no big deal at all. I took this water pump off, or I took the water pump off the car that was on it, and I took it to O'Reilly's, and I told them I need a water pump for a 68 Cadillac. And they ordered it. They had it the next day. We compared them. I could tell right away it was going to fit better than the one I took off the car. So I put it on and everything's been fine. So I don't know why, someone put one on that didn't fit, because finding the right one, even though it can be an issue, really wasn't that difficult. O'Reilly's just ordered one for a 68 Cadillac and it fit perfect right out of the box.
And like the first time this car came to us, it does have a bit of a laundry list, because this was a barn find, and the owner is a Cadillac collector and a member, president, I believe, of one of the local GM clubs. And he purchased this car out in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and had a very positive 200-mile trip back here to Detroit. And then the bottom began to fall out of the experience, because I think you've pointed this out before. When people shock a car back to life, it'll pretty much give you the last ounce of strength it has.
Right.
And then it'll start to shake itself out in other ways.
Right. That is extremely common. If you ever buy a car that was in pretty good shape when they parked it, but then it sat for a long time, sometimes it's not that big of a deal to get it running again, but then as you're, like you say, shaking it down the first time, stuff that wasn't broken 20 or 30 years ago when it was parked will start failing, especially leaks. You'll start getting an awful lot of leaks.
There. Thank you. And the next time you pass this gas station, please do. All right, wise guy.
And that is one of the issues that this car is back for. It does have a leak.
Yeah, it's always had some leaks, and I've been chasing them for a while. And you want to put it up in the air?
Sure.
Okay. I did we put a radiator in this. I think we had the original one re-cored. So it's the original tank since a new core.
And as the audience can see, it is in extremely nice reconditioned shape.
I got to put a couple bolts back in here. I'm putting a thermostat in it today or tomorrow, whenever I get to it. But I'll show you what's going on underneath. All right, so he does have some leaks. It's leaking a little bit of oil and a little bit more trans fluid. The first time he was here, it was leaking back here, and someone else had already thrown a tail shaft housing seal at it to try to fix the leak. When I looked at it, I realized that at the time it was actually leaking through the middle of the yoke. The yoke coming out of the drive shaft and then coming out of the trans, going to the drive shaft. I tried to fix it by gooing it up with RTV. The first time it didn't work. He came back a second time, and then it looks now like it did work, but he still has some transmission leakage, and it looks to me like it's not coming from here at all. This all looks dry, but this little drip here looks like it's running down the tail shaft housing here, and it's starting here at the transpan gasket, and there's even, transmission fluid hanging off of the bolts here. It's got a cork gasket in it right now. We found a nice heavy-duty transpan gasket for the Chrysler 727s, and the same company that makes that makes a nice heavy-duty one for these Turbo 400s too. So I ordered that, and that's what I'm going to put on this, and I'm going to do my normal thing. I'll take this pan off, I'll check the flange and make sure it's nice and flat, and if it isn't flat, I'll try to knock it flat, pound it out a little bit. This is obviously a new gasket, so this pan has been off once before, at least once. And of course, what always worries me with that is that when they put the pan on, they'll take their impact gun and whoop, 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 whoop. Well, not whoop, more like brrrr, brrrr.
You've seen it all before.
Yeah, and then they just, they over torque the bolts and it bends the pan, and then the best gasket in the world isn't gonna seal it. So I'll check that and make sure it's okay. The oil leak, you can follow this wetness up the driver's side of the engine all the way up to the valve cover. So I ordered valve cover gaskets for it, and I'm going to replace the valve cover gaskets and then clean this as best I can to make sure it's okay. So that's just, and then you were talking about the exhaust, and I wish he hadn't brought this to us this way. He had someone else put exhaust on this, and then it wasn't right, and he asked us if we could fix it, and we made the mistake of saying, okay, we'll try it. We should have told him to take it back to the people who did the exhaust, because now we got an issue up here. I don't know how well the camera is going to show it, but where the exhaust pipe bolts onto the manifold there, this stud is just stripped out. It's not going to hold a nut anymore, so that stud coming out of the exhaust manifold just needs to be replaced.
Well, you're going to be doing some work to this car.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of little stuff, but it does add up quickly.
Mm-hmm. He's got a couple other little minor electrical problems. The door jamb switch on this side doesn't work very well. And then you can wiggle it and it will come back. Inline tube has a new door jamb switch for it. I'm just going to put on. It's a 2-minute job. 1 or 2 light bulbs burnt out inside the car. These side marker lights are burnt out. We got the bulbs over there. I'm going to be putting those in. Little stuff. These were kind of special. I think I found them on Amazon, but O'Reilly's didn't have them in stock, and I think they couldn't even order them, but I found them online somewhere.
A lot of little stuff on what is not a little car.
Mm-hmm.
The 1968 Cadillac Coupe Deville. And it's been slightly customized. But it still remains with its factory 472 big block V8.
Hey, you still got the drum brakes in there too. I like that.
So I'll let you get back to work on this one, Eric, and we'll pick this up right after this. So with that short list of repairs completed, Eric took the 68 Coupe Deville on a quick run to check for leaks. And soon we were back inside our Chase headquarters, looking at what makes this Cadillac an American automotive icon. Well, here we are. How's the Cadillac looking, Eric?
Much better. It came in with a couple of leaks, trans fluid, engine oil. I think all that's fixed now. I fixed them about 2 days ago, and the car hasn't left any drips on the ground since then. I replaced the valve cover gaskets. The customer told me to check the torque on the bolts on the trans pan and the oil pan and a couple other things, which I did. Bolts on the oil pan were a little bit loose. Bolts on the trans pan were a little bit loose. I could tell someone already threw a trans pan gasket in it recently, and it's one of the cork gaskets, which are, you know, that's probably what this car had when it left the factory, but I don't like them. So I found a heavy-duty transpan gasket like you may have seen us put before on Chrysler 727s. And I put that on here. I, of course, did my typical thing of checking the transpan, make sure that someone hadn't over-tightened the bolts before and stretched the flange of the pan so that where the bolt goes in so the gasket wouldn't seal anymore. Thank God no one had done that, so I was able to just put the pan back on. So it doesn't seem to be leaking trans fluid anymore, it doesn't seem to be leaking oil anymore. The oil leak was very small, but it was leaving little drips on the bottom of the bell housing of the trans. And it wasn't trans fluid, the trans fluid leak was further back. What was on the bottom of the bell housing was engine oil. And it looked to me like it was coming up from the valve cover gaskets, especially the one on the driver's side. So I did those yesterday, did a coolant flush on it. Gosh, it runs a heck of a lot cooler now, and the fluid was a little bit chunky coming out.
I know you ran into a little issue with that thermostat you were going to replace. What ended up happening with that?
I was never able to find a thermostat that fit. I don't know what's going on. I got to do a little bit more research or something. I don't remember where I put the thermostat, the new one. I put the old one back in it. The one I ordered from O'Reilly's was too big to fit. You know, the circumference. It needed to be smaller.
Yes, I know we didn't get that on video, but I noticed it was at least like 50% bigger in diameter.
I don't know if it was quite that much bigger, but it wasn't going to come anywhere near fitting. It was probably, I don't know, it was 1/4 of an inch around or something like that, all the way around, too big. So yeah, I guess, I mean, 1/4 and 1/4 on both sides, 1/2 inch too big maybe, I don't know. But it wasn't going to fit. He told me to check the hoses and the belts. I think we did all that when we did the radiator in this car. If I remember correctly, we got new hoses and belts for it.
Yes, I seem to remember we did.
And at the same time, you know, that was his first time he came here, which was close to a year ago. And also at that time, I replaced the fan clutch and the water pump because the water pump was rubbing on the fan belts, which apparently is a common problem with aftermarket pumps for 472 Cadillacs. But this one fits beautifully. I found a hose going to his automatic trans cooler where the clamp was a little bit loose, and all I did was tighten it and clean it to make sure if it leaked again we could tell, and so far it hasn't. Oh my gosh, he had 4 light bulbs burnt out in this car, and 3 of them were the same bulb. So Cadillac for a long time has had these little lights right here. They're literally headlights, and they're almost as powerful as a headlight bulb. And the idea is when you turn on your turn signal, like say you're turning right, you turn on your turn signal, this light here illuminates quite brightly. It's similar to a Tucker with the Cyclops headlights, so that when you're turning, you can see that way and see where you're going. Really cool safety feature. But both of these lights on both the fronts were burned out. O'Reilly's couldn't get them for some reason, so I found them on Amazon. I ordered a package of them, and it's a good thing I didn't order just 2, because one of his reverse lights was burned out, and it was the same bulb, $12.93, I think. I've got the package over here. And I still have like 8 bulbs in here or something like that. Yep, $12.93 is the part number. So it was the 2 cornering lights and then the reverse light. So I did all that. His other 2 biggest complaints where there's a light out under the dashboard, which actually the bulb wasn't bad, it just wasn't in all the way. I had to give it a little turn and then it was fine. You know, the prongs hadn't clipped into their slots and locked in. That's all it was. And then his interior lights didn't come on consistently when you open the driver's door. That ended up being the door jamb switch in here. The contacts were just yucky. So I cleaned them. Not this door jamb switch, its counterpart on the driver's side. I cleaned the contacts and put it back in, and now it's beautiful. I like to think that we admit our problems here. So the first time we brought this car here, I put that CHMSL in.
And CHMSL stands for?
Center high mounted stoplight. It's been mandatory on all cars sold in the US since the 1986 model year.
And folks, that's just the high mounted brake light you have on the back of most modern cars, but in 1968 they didn't exist.
No. For safety reasons, I'm sure he wants to add that. Well, I hate to admit, when he brought it here, my rigging up fell apart. Now I gotta admit, I had to re-engineer this a little bit because of his vinyl top. If I had just put it on the package tray where it's kind of meant to go, you wouldn't see it. It'd be underneath here. So I had to rig a way to bring it up, and my rigging didn't last, it fell apart. So I went to Menards, I bought a bunch of hardware, I got a ton of lock nuts and lock washers on there. I think it's gonna stay this time.
And we were concerned about that because this is a universal kit. And as you pointed out, this is a 68 Coupe Deville. It's set up in a very unique way, which didn't necessarily mean a universal kit was going to work right off the bat. So you had to do some more fabricating and come up with a better, long-lasting solution to this problem. But now, it's in there, safe and sound.
Yeah, and it works, so yeah, I hope it holds up. I think that's pretty much it. He told me to give the car a safety inspection, which I did. It's in really good shape.
I know he wanted the suspension looked at.
Yeah, I did that. I put a little grease in the ball joints and tie rods and everything. Nothing's loose. Put some fresh grease in there, which, by the way, for those of you watching, I highly recommend that. That's one of those things people forget about on all these old cars. They forget to grease the ball joints and tie rods. They forget to repack the wheel bearings. That's super important because grease, when it sits for long periods of time, it loses its viscosity. I don't know what they put in the grease to keep it like wet. I assume it's probably benzene or something like that, but it evaporates over time and the grease turns into like a wax and then it doesn't lubricate anymore. So you have to do that. And
is that why grease dries out eventually?
Yeah, and they don't make chassis parts like this anymore. Most of the company, you go to a big box parts store and most of the ball joints and tie rods you buy are just garbage. They're absolute junk. I mean, I've seen them go bad in just 6 months. Even the ones with the lifetime warranty. Don't be fooled by a lifetime warranty. It doesn't mean anything. You know, all they want to do is sell you the part. It's so cheap for them to build ball joints and tie rods these days that they literally don't care if they have to give you 4 free ones. They don't care because it's so cheap. So the lifetime warranty literally means nothing anymore. You have to find either NOS or, so far, I've had good luck with Spicer and Mevotech. So if you get those brands, that's what I recommend if I recommend anything. But the best thing you can do is just keep the old stuff. There's nothing like the old stuff. If it's still good, put grease in it and keep using it.
And the ball joints in this car, I take it, were still reusable.
Yep. Yeah, there's no play in them. They're perfect. But anyway, back to the exhaust on this. I found the correct studs in a kit that Inline Tube had. And the other places could get it, I'm sure, but Inline Tube had it in stock. You know, I was able to just get it today and do it.
And long story short, you had to bring the car back here, get it back on the lift.
Yeah, I had to put up on the lift and fix it myself. So that stripped out stud, I was able, with a combination of vibration with an air hammer, heat, and croil, to finally work it back and forth with vice grips until it gave, and then I was able to spin it out, spin the new one in, and put it back together. So it's not. He actually, when he dropped this car off, the customer said, the noise is annoying me. Bodge it back together if you have to. Well, I'm proud to say we didn't bodge it. It's fixed correctly. So
fantastic. And as far as his radio and power antenna, what did you discover with that?
The radio doesn't work.
Can you show us?
What's that?
Can you show us?
That it doesn't work? You want me to just turn it on and say, look, it doesn't work?
Just to give people the experience of the fine interior of the 68 Coupe Deville.
You know what? I don't think it was doing that before. See how it says AM? That light wasn't coming on before. Huh. Well, I mean, it's still not making any noise, but anyway, yeah, it's not working. I suspect the radio is just plain bad. I checked all of his fuses. All the fuses, including the radio fuse, are good. You know, maybe I'll get on my grandstand a little bit and talk about that for a moment, but his complaint was that the power radio antenna wasn't coming up when you turn the radio on. I took a look at it. It did used to work the first time, you know, a couple times he was here, it worked, which I thought was amazing because they're always bad. But now it doesn't work. There is a person out there that rebuilds them. I don't think we got enough time for that because he's picking this car up tomorrow, but we can give him the option anyway of sending it out and having it rebuilt. But it's got an internal short. I took my test light and checked it out, and it's internally shorted. Back to the radio though, let me bring the manual for this car up and let me show you guys something. I took it home last night, it's in my car. So we have a lot of aftermarket manuals here, Chilton's and whatever, and that's okay for doing tune-ups and things. But most of the work we do here is so involved that I'm a lot more comfortable having the factory manual. This is not an original manual from 1968. This is actually a reprint. And I gotta tell you all, if you're working on your own cars, number one, get a factory manual, not just an aftermarket one like a Chilton's or a Haynes. Those are okay for some basic stuff. But if it's your car and you own it and you're working on it, factory manuals are not that expensive. So get the one for your car and don't get a reprint. Get the original one. This is a reprint. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, it's a reprint of the original manual. All the information in it's got to be fine. And you're right. All the information is the same. The problem is the quality of the manual. So, I mean, if you look at this, it's a little tricky to read all this. The resolution is pretty bad and pretty faint. But yeah, you can read it until you get to the wiring diagrams. So the font on the wiring diagrams is smaller than the font in the rest of the manual. And a lot of this you just can't read. There literally isn't enough dots to tell you, you know, the stuff like the circuit, the color of the wire, the gauge of the wire, all that stuff on here. The font is just so small, the resolution is so bad, you can't read it. And I'm not talking about getting a magnifying glass and read it. There's nothing to magnify. There just aren't enough dots there to make letters and numbers.
Kind of like if you were to take a low resolution image and blow it up, there just aren't enough pixels.
Exactly.
It just becomes a blurry image.
Exactly. So don't get reprints, get the factory stuff. This is kind of junk.
But it got you to where you needed to go.
Except for the radio.
Except for the radio.
To try to diagnose that, I might have to do something I really hate doing, exploratory surgery. You know, start getting into the dash, which I hate taking stuff apart just to diagnose it. I don't think I got many choice really here.
Best thing to do is let the customer know what he's in for.
Yeah.
So you know what the problem is. Now we got to give him the option to bring it back again later this season and say, well, if you want to tackle this too, replace the bad radio and the shorted antenna mast. We'll get into that in our next episode with the 68 Cadillac Coupe Deville. I don't know if I'm getting into a car or an ocean liner.
Or a luxury hotel. That's actually what I always thought it smelled like in here, is a nice hotel. Yeah, so this is a pretty good customer's car. This is the third time this car's been here. I fixed a few problems that it's kind of always had. He had someone else do the exhaust on it, and they didn't hang things right, and they stripped out one of the studs on the driver's side exhaust manifold, so that the nut that holds the downpipe to the manifold, you just couldn't tighten it. I replaced that. I put another strap on the exhaust over the rear axle so it shouldn't slide down. It actually slid down in the bracket that was holding it before. Now it can't do that. So it should be much quieter. I mean, it was so bad, and with the exhaust, it was actually, the axle was hitting the exhaust. Not the axle, the control arm over the top of it, actually, to be more specific.
And the customer's complaint was it sounded like old jalopy going down the road. But now, oh my goodness, how smooth, quiet.
It's running cooler. I did get a lot of crud out of the radiator, which is interesting because we actually had this radiator record last time he was here, or the first time he was here. Other than that, his biggest concern really was leaks. And knock on wood, I fixed the leaks a few days ago, and since then it hasn't left any drips on the floor. So the oil leaks and trans fluid leaks, and maybe a little bit of power steering, maybe, but I don't know if you even knew about that. But there was looks like a power steering cooler on it, and one of the clamps for one of the hoses was just kind of loose, so I tightened it. Or that might have been a trans cooler, I'm not sure. I didn't really diagnose it, you know, it looked like it was leaking, so I tightened it and cleaned it up, so if it leaks again we could tell, that's all.
But now we are getting the true 60s full-size Cadillac experience.
It was a little bit low on power steering fluid too, so that's the other reason I thought it might be power steering.
Speaking of power, this car's got just about power everything, which for the time, again, it's a Cadillac, but I don't think that was very normal for most passenger cars.
No. Power radio antenna, power locks, power windows. This little crank here is actually for the vent window. I'm not going to play with it because with my luck I'll break it. 62,700 miles on this car. And I would guess, judging by the condition of the interior, that's almost certainly original.
And what a lovely place it is to be. So how does it compare to other luxury cars of the era that you've driven, Eric?
Well, I haven't driven all that many. I did drive I don't remember what year it was, 63 maybe, Lincoln Continental. That was not a customer's car. That was at a concours event. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Haggerty does their sign and drive or whatever it is at a lot of concours. They'll be there and they'll have cars that you can sign up to take a test drive on a little course they set up. And so I drove a Continental there, and that was really cool. But, you know, I don't have a heck of a lot to compare it to yet.
Well, so you're a Chrysler New Yorker. I'm sure that was
very comparable. I've heard the Chryslers were never as soft as the Lincolns and the Cadillacs. It's so close. I think it's splitting hairs. I think they're just about as soft.
And I'm inclined to agree. I mean, this Cadillac is a soft ride, but I will admit, as soft as it is, I was kind of expecting it to be softer.
Yeah. You know, that Eldorado was the same way, that 79 we did. I was shocked that that car wasn't softer.
Me too. It really felt like it had sport tuned suspension. Now, this Coupe Deville can hardly be considered tuned sport.
No, this is definitely softer.
And it's not disappointing at all. It's just, I will admit, based on the hyperbole, as people talk about that ultra soft Cadillac ride, I think we've ridden in some other full-size cars that do it just as well. And those even had torsion bar suspension. What is this one riding on?
This is coil springs on all corners.
But it is silky smooth. How's that big 472 feel under your foot?
Torquey. I don't know about powerful, but torquey.
I felt the torque right there. That little spike in the speedometer.
Let's see. Everything works in this car, I think, except the radio, of course, which I don't know if he's going to bring it back for that or what. Power radio antenna, which has an internal short in it. There are places that can rebuild them. So if he brings it back, I don't remember why, but he's got to pick the car up soon. He's got something he's taking it to. Let's see. I don't know if the clock works. I haven't looked at it. And the air conditioning, I don't think works. That's something I think we quoted him a repair on earlier, and he hasn't done it yet. He's also got to do some work on the vinyl top on this car. It's getting a bit shabby, and he's got a place in mind to have that done.
Right. But overall, I was a little skeptical when this car first rolled in, and you were given so little time to work on it. I know this time around you feel like you've really got it sorted out.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the issue is, but this car always gets us in a little bit of trouble. We'll either misunderstand what he wants, or I'll be working on it and I'll be almost finished, and then suddenly he's got to pick it up for some reason. And
he's a busy man with a busy schedule.
He is very busy.
And he takes this car with him a lot of places.
I think he uses it to promote his business, doesn't he?
I believe so, with his affiliation with the GM clubs.
So it's always something, and knock on wood, it seems to have worked out pretty well this time.
it feels sorted. It sounds sorted, it rides sorted. I gotta tell you, I'm really impressed with the work you've done. I know this is the first time we've really got a chance to experience it together and ride along here, and hopefully the audience is getting a feel for what a 68 Coupe Deville feels like inside. But I gotta tell you, this is a very, very nice place to be. I know I said that about the Eldorado too, but the Eldorado surprised me in numerous ways. This car runs on reputation alone, and it has a stellar reputation as the premier luxury car of the 1960s.
Yeah.
Right up there with the Imperials and the Lincolns.
And the CHMSL, I think, is finally in good shape.
Great. That is one finger steering if ever I've seen it. Love it. That's what these cars are famous for.
You know, what's nice about it though is it doesn't have that dead spot. If I have any complaints about Chrysler steering, it's that awful dead spot where you can turn the wheel this much and the car doesn't react to it.
This one does.
Yeah, at least with the Saginaw steering box, the GM box, and the Ford, because I think they use the same box in most of their vehicles, you don't have that dead spot. Is their power steering still over-assisted and a little bit vague? Yes, it is. But at least the car responds when you move the steering wheel. And Chrysler, even in the police Chryslers, that doesn't happen. The police Chryslers are better, but the police Chryslers are not as good as the civilian GM and Fords. That's my biggest complaint about the Chryslers.
Well, I've heard people say about these full-size Cadillacs that you start making your turn and wonder what the back end is doing halfway through the turn. But every time you've been turning and braking and accelerating through this little test drive, it seems very controlled and very manageable.
Yeah, it does what you tell it to do. Don't expect it to, respond like a sports car, but...
No, but it's certainly zippier than I would have expected for a car with a reputation like this one has, as being the optimum of excess, American excess, of the swinging 60s. And what a lovely place it is. Just quiet, roomy, luxurious. That was really fun, Eric. I enjoyed that cruise.
Yeah, I like this car a lot.
It's definitely grown on us.
Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Cadillacs, as you know, and I love the stacked headlights, 65 to 68. So.
Well, before we say goodbye to the 68 Cadillac Coupe Deville, we'll take a few more parting shots, and then we'll get ready to reunite it with its owner. He'll be here this evening, and I'm sure he's in for a very good ride because I really enjoyed that ride.
Yeah, I think this car's pretty well sorted now, so...
That's a good place for it to be. We'll catch you next time, Eric. Good luck.
All right. We service Cadillacs and other fine cars.
If you enjoy automotive content like we do, consider subscribing to our channel or check out our website to join our VIP-only high-speed chase club for early videos and other great perks.